Hello and welcome to another episode of Alan Writes. It's Sunday for me, and I'm going to be ready. There we go. See, this is the Winter of Truth, and it's episode 24, 25. I'm losing count here, and I don't generally check before I go in. So, whatever it is, we're going to begin. This is the political information part of things, of how the factions and everything else works. We're going to run through it with Finara and Telek, and get her to understand how screwed up the Empire is. With they're not unified, not more of an overt goal than anything else, held together top down, a variety of competing factions, so to speak. It's true in any political situation, but it's particularly bad in the Empire, where the squabble for power is not only present, but is encouraged by those at top in order to keep the rival factions from any one of them from gaining too much power or influence, thereby requiring an adjustment by the emperor. He wants to stay in place, but he is only one man, even if he's, as we know now, extremely powerful. And with a lot of people who, there's no loyalty per se in the empire, not like you'd think, and not at the top. There is, however, self-interest and preservation, of course. And if you, it seems like your idealism will get in the way, and if you're really good at your job, you won't get promoted unless you're political, in which case, well, we don't have to go into politics and effectiveness another time. So, let's move on. Me, of course. She stared at him, trying to understand the words. The meaning of the words. Those words. The dim memories of the cold, of the agony, of the... It threatened to be too much. All of a sudden, she wasn't hungry anymore. But angry. Angry at what had happened. Angry that about those who had done it, and that they would apparently pay so little of a price. A need, she said finally. Yes. As my personal representative, in certain matters, Telek indicated. Leaning back in the flimsy hospital held chair, he tried to adopt a languid, a relaxed pose, but the chair was fighting him. But the leaning back as he said so, but the flimsy hospital chair. This is a precursor to the fact that she's been injured, she's been hurt. She's not going to simply take it. I mean, she's going to do something about this. She's an engineer. She fixes things. Yes, as my personal representative, certain matters. You have a great deal of expertise that can be readily employed. For who? Expert. How about expertise? There we go. That can be readily employed. By who? Me, of course. And the Navy. And the Navy. The Navy. But I work with Army. Oh, she said. This is a power squabble. But I work with the Army. Exactly. The Navy has need to make certain the Army stays where it is. Stays where it is. And understands its role. Telek said. All too often, what are we talking about? All too often, their garrisons come under fire because of sloppy actions on their actions dirt side. Then the Navy is to come running to help, pulling forces away from convoys, planetary protection, and hunting rebels. Is an intolerable situation. Why didn't you intervene earlier? She asked, gesturing to her leg, her missing leg. We didn't know. Lorna only heard what was going on. Only heard what's going on later. After days had passed, and by the time he sent a coded message to us, well, we came as quickly as we could came as quickly as we could make an excuse. Let's see, the naval ships don't whisk themselves across the universe. That's at your command, Finara. Telek said, and shrugged. I pressed forward as quickly as my position allowed. Now then, shall we discuss the battle damage report? 10 to file. Is that another jab at the Army? Is that another jab at the Army? Oh, it is. They've been trying to conceal what happened to their precious AT-ATs. They've been trying to conceal what happened to their precious AT-ATs. To reframe the argument. Because That's what you do when you know you can't win one argument. You simply reframe the argument somewhere else to something that you can win. It's an old rhetorical trick. To reframe the argument, lay blame on the stormtrooper and General Veers, and possibly General, and more importantly, General Veers. He's army. Yes, but he's special army. He has connections that make him troublesome to them. The stormtroopers are an imperial asset, are an asset of the Empire, of the Emperor, are an asset of the Emperor, and their failures reflect strongly, poorly on him. So the troopers and the Navy have been trying to make the Army come to grips with the failures of Hoth, Telek said. Oh, don't look so surprised, as you didn't believe all that airy did you? You didn't believe all that airy propaganda, did you? That it was a resounding victory? That Admiral Ozzel pulled off an attack. A glorious attack. That Admiral also pulled off a glorious attack, and died tragically at the moment of victory. He was choked to death. Before the battle even began. Piet managed things as best he could. Finara. The moment of victory? Finara asked, repeating the words she'd heard time and again. On account of the ion cannon? Yes, Telek said. That was an unexpected wrinkle. To the blockade. How many escaped? Nearly all, Telek said. I shrugged. Nearly all. A pity. But also the reason Ozzel was killed. if forces had been landed secretly on the other side of the planet, the sudden assault would have caught many. The sudden assault, when combined with an orbital bombardment, would have caught many of the naval vessels on the surface. As it was, there had to be ground assault, and, well, the troopers succeeded. But at a cost. A cost that displeased the Emperor greatly. Displeased the Emperor. It did. It did. Is that why you? Of course. Pleasing the Emperor is never a bad thing, Telek said. His troopers couldn't be blamed for the failures of Ozzel. Could be blamed for the failures. Ozzel was punished. Ozzel was punished. Ozzel was punished. Ozzel was punished, so the Navy was forgiven. That left the Army to take the blame. And the ISB, why did they I don't know, Telek said. It was an unforeseen twist. And your capture and a brush with a and interrogation were regrettable. She saw it then. The factions, the movements, the decisions they had all made. Much as Telek had laid out. The failure of an admiral. The Navy unwilling to take the blame. The troopers' losses. Their unwillingness. Their patrons' unwillingness to let that go. The Army standing by the Army refusing to accept punishment for something it didn't do. The ISB swooping in to sort things out after they went off the rails, and a single agent seeking to please the Emperor about some crumbs concerning Luke Skywalker. And here she was, scattered along with the crumbs, trying to put her life back together. She knew there was trauma lying in wait for the next time she tried to sleep, or eat, or went out in the cold. It would always be there. And no one really cared. Not even Telok. Because only her skills mattered. If they could have boxed those up and slotted them into a droid, they would have done it already. The Empire had fissures where she had seen only unity. Deep fissures. They would require some welding to fix, and welding required heat and the proper tools. Required the proper tools to apply solder and heat. What about my leg? What about my leg? She asked. I'm not much good from a chair. They'll fix it. They'll get you a leg, a nice one. Lots of kick to it, so you can make things move. I noticed that you asked them to remove the hip. I noticed you asked them to remove the hip instead of just above the knee. Better that way. Better that way. Better that way. Faster recovery. Faster recovery. Faster recovery. Also, what would be the other advantage of it from getting it at the hip? Better that way. Faster recovery. I should know. He said, and held up his hand, his kinetic hand. Truth is, I only lost a few fingers, but found that replacing those was more trouble than they were worth. Placing those was more trouble than they were more trouble. Placing those were more trouble than they were worth. So I had them remove the entire hand. Would have gone, in retrospect, I would have gone. Retrospect, the entire arm would have been better. Better. Would have been better. You can do things with an entire arm that you can't with just a hand. All right, Finara said, because there was nothing else to say about the topic. Telok had already made the choice for her, as he had done with just about everything. Let's talk about that battle damage assessment. Okay, no, we can move ahead on this. I don't want to just talk about it, I want to show it. And how to pin it on the army. The presentation Finara gave was the most difficult of her career. Her new leg had kept playing tricks on her all through rehabilitation, through a rushed rehabilitation. It weighed more than she liked. And she liked and made her gait rather strange when in her gait almost drunken, and gave her gait an almost drunken twist when she tried more than a slow walk. But there, standing behind the podium, she locked it in. She locked it in place with only a limited range of motions allowed. All right, and this is her kind of rebelling against the machine part that Telek expected her to appreciate, and so on and so on. I imagine Telek in some parts would have wanted to take both legs because it's easier that way, because that way she doesn't stumble at all or what have you, and we'll see where it goes. With only a limited range of motions allowed. She let the holograms do the talking, do the walking for her. The officers in the room were a mix. Army, Navy, or a mix of Army and Navy. We're almost all Army. Almost all Army men. with just a few few civilians, just a scattering of civilians amongst them. The civilians were what mattered most here. The generals were apparently a credit for a dozen at the upper echelons. The Battle of Hoth. The Battle of Hoth. She began and dimmed the lights. The murmurs of the crowd quieted down for the moment. She would have to make sure they stayed silent. Was a resounding victory. She clicked on the first image that showed the opening stage of the AT-AT assault. Would be a resounding victory. Be a resounding victory. It showed the flawless formation of the Blizzard Force. The Emperor's personal project for ground assault. Was not without losses. The speeders swooped in, firing and failing to pierce AT-AT armor. Then came the harpoon. Then came the harpoon, the wrapping of the tech about the legs, magnetic harpoon, the wrap. And then the fall of the AT-AT. The rebels adopted a novel technique that worked only once. She said, it need not have worked at all. The speeders swooped in like a drunk Doug. At first, like a drunk Doug. And fired, exploding the hull. Need not have worked. It need not have worked at all. Measures had been taken. These blast points are the result of a high angled assault of high angled fire. The result of high angled fire against the neck joint, a portion that has been proposed to be armored by a canopy Furthermore, degaussing it was an oversight. It was an oversight to let that drop. Use blast points to the result. That had been proposed to be armored by a retractable canopy. The murmurs returned. The murmurs returned. A murmur swept through the crowd, through the attendees. A murmur swept through the attendees. Some apparently knew where this was going. That proposal was still in the developmental stage. A general protested. Still in the developmental stage. For the last 3 years, Telex said from his seat near the podium. His naval uniform, stark contrast to the army garb. The army garb. For the last 3 years, yes. Stuck would be an apt word. This is just that's a lie. We've pushed hard against. Let her finish. Another general. His hawkish features fixed on Finara. I want to hear how we could have saved the lives of loyal troopers. General Veers, the other general began to say, then stammered to a halt as Veers's gaze turned to him. I command. fixed upon him. Finara cleared her throat and continued. In truth, once disabled, the AT-AT was vulnerable, no matter what armor upgrades had been furnished. It was only a question of when. It was only a question of when the fuel cells were breached. But it need not have happened at all if the legs had been degaussed, demagnetized, as had been suggested, as had been suggested previously as part of battle preparation. Part of the battle preparation. Telek swiftly added, as planned. That too has been resisted as part of standard prepper. The rebels knew this, which was why the magnetized harpoon could find purchase for the legs. Furthermore, adequate pilot training would have would have halted the walker before when the speeder started circling. Indicating a different tactic. Your Navy, not Army. Don't tell us what to do. A voice called from the back. She couldn't see who it was. And they didn't identify themselves either. Okay. Demagnetizing the legs would take only a few minutes by Finara said to resume the talk. Someone interjected subjects about the AT-AT Luke took down. Weaknesses below and above. There is footage of this. Some sort of limpet mine. A redesign of the fuel cells is in order. The Kuwait Yards will accept some blame. And that will mollify the army. Alright, spreading some stuff around, making the army feel like they can get away with it. Everybody is going to kind of agree with it, and we're going to move on. And things are going to sort of go back to normal. She's going to have a light workload at work, and then, well, I don't know. She'll have to do this presentation again, I imagine. She'll have to refine it. This is just maybe a test case, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there and see where we go for when the rebels contact her to put her really in a pickle. Now that she's got some, now that she's in the front of things and giving these presentations and so on. But this has been an episode of Alan Writes, whatever number it happens to be. The Winter of Truth. I hope you've enjoyed this little walk on the, not the dark side, but it's a look or a peek into the Imperial factionism in Star Wars, because these things do exist. They'll exist as long as people exist. It's a question of how prevalent they are and how much they get in the way of a unifying goal. As always, stay safe out there and take care. Thanks.